All right, let's get started with Planning Center and how it integrates into what we see every weekend for a Sunday service. So first and foremost, when we go over to Planning Center, everything is linked from here. So all the pre-service, countdown, announcement offering, worship, sermon, and dismissal, all those headers that you see over here on this side, pre-service, these are headers just to space out what's happening inside of ProPresenter. If you come over to Planning Center, you'll see that for each header there's an item, and these items get linked in this way so we can add our files, which we'll cover more on that in just a second. Just want to give you a brief overview. So the biggest reason why we structure it this way is that once the songs are input in Planning Center and we're utilizing Planning Center as our main scheduler of everything that happens on the weekend, I just put one song in for this upcoming weekend just to use as an example. We probably won't sing that song, but let's walk through how we set up a brand new service as though none of this has happened yet. So come up here to this plus icon under Library and go to Planning Center Service. You'll see two file options here, but obviously we're looking for Sunday morning, October 2nd. There you go. So we've got October the 2nd selected and ready to go. You'll notice all the content is missing. So each week we will, that's all there is to adding in the Planning Center service, by the way, but once we do that, we've got to link all of our files. So we link files by just coming to this search icon, and what this search icon is going to do is it's hunting through the library. Your library is where everything, all these sermon notes that we've created, all the songs, anything that you've created that you drag and drop slides into or whatnot, all this information stays within the library. So when you're out here on pre-service slides and you hit search, if you have this little icon highlighted, this is your library, and it's going to look for, it'll populate whatever the title is in the item. So pre-service slides is how it's listed over here on Planning Center. It's named that. This is named that, and when you hit search, I have a file inside of the library named pre-service slides, so that all you have to do is click that, highlight pre-service slides, hit link, and there you go. Now, for pre-service slides, to create a slideshow, you'll notice there's not the little 10-second counter on each individual slide as there used to be, and it's because there is a counter option up here in the item description. So this will say, hey, every single slide, I want it to show for 10 seconds and then move on to the next one. And it'll loop all these media files regardless of what's in here. If we wanted to take something out and add something in, just drop it wherever you want to add it or drop it, and it'll just continuously cycle what is inside of just this folder area. So we continue this process by coming down to countdown video. There's one for Wednesday, and there's one, well, I guess I could name it Sunday, but countdown video would just be your normal countdown video. So you repeat the process all the way down until everything is highlighted. We'll do more on songs, themes, and arrangements in just a moment, but we'll just say for now we're adding our files. We don't have sermon notes for right now, so we'll just drag in something older. So in less than 30 seconds, you've put everything in place for the weekend that you've needed to put in place. So that's how you would import from Planning Center, and that's how you would link your files. Okay, so now that we have discussed our importing of the Planning Center service and we got all our files linked up, let's go through how we import songs that may not be in the library. This is probably a pretty crucial one. So we're gonna search for a song that's probably not in this library right now. Heaven Invade by Carrie Job. So if you search Heaven Invade, now of course, when you're importing from Planning Center, this would say, if it's the song you're looking for, the entire worship set will populate. If it's 7 songs, 3 songs, whatever. So we'll just pretend this, instead of Here For You, says Heaven Invade. And we want to add Heaven Invade, but it doesn't exist in our library because we just searched for it and nothing's coming up. So what this tab is, this is Song Select. And what Song Select enables us to do is to search for songs that are CCLI content and CCM content, which is all of your mass-produced worship songs, and grab it from there, which we do have an account. This is the song number, but we have an account with CCLI. So Heaven Invade, it's the one that I'm looking for. I can tell by the lyrics that I'm looking at. And if there were multiples of that song that you searched, you would just click on it and check out the lyrics to make sure that the lyrics match. So you hit import and link, and it takes you to the import slide. Now this is important because we don't ever really mess with anything up here or the size of the slide, but the theme is something that we have recently changed. So currently it's highlighted and selected, which is awesome. But if you ever wanted to choose a different slide look, like lower thirds or anything like that, you could. But for in-house, what we're doing right now is using this medium look. So it's already highlighted and ready to go. But just to check it, you'll see a theme sitting here when you import. But just to make sure that it's on the right one, just check it out. Once you have your themes all set up and good to go, it's going to save it to the library. You don't want to add it to a playlist just yet. And before we import, we want to edit this. And why this is important, you can enlarge this window. It really does help if you do so. We want to edit this because we're going to create a master file, which will make more sense in just a second. So as you see, these lines and how they look over here is not necessarily how it will look on the screen. This slide is how it will look on the screen. So what we might want to consider doing is just dropping some of these slides to make it look a little bit more clean. And for the sake of time, we'll just say this is how we would want it to look. It does look a little jumbled and maybe a little bit too many words on the screen for how big or small our screens may be to the person's perception reading them. I think 4 lines is usually 4 to 5 is about as far as I would go as far as so this one here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It just seems like a lot for the eye to take in and be able to follow along with. I could be completely wrong in that, but you could just put Heaven Invade, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5, but debatable. However you guys like to set it up and whatever makes sense to you. So this now will say this whole thing looks great, and if you are happy with it, then you import. All right, so now what we are looking at the arrangements tab, which is right here. So you open this arrangements tab and you'll see that it defaults to the master. So what your master is imagine that you're wanting to you have an easel, like you're gonna paint like an artist, and the master file is all of your paint selection to enable you to build something later, or paint something later as the analogy would go. So first step in adding this is we want to add a blank slide. Now this blank slide, because it's purple, it's attached to the bridge grouping. So anytime I put a bridge in the song later, it's going to put both of these slides, and we don't want that. So we right click it and we name it a blank slide. So you want all of your lyric content. If it's one verse, a chorus, and a bridge, kind of like Waymaker, maybe it might have 2 verses actually, but anything that you read on the lyric sheet for the song just needs to be in its own grouping. So you have 1 verse, and we have 1 pre-chorus, and we have 1 second verse, and 1 chorus, and 1 bridge. we need a blank slide just to be able to build our song as the MP3 or as the worship leader wishes to execute the song. So now, in order to build that arrangement, we just come down to new arrangement off of the master. Name it whatever you want. The date doesn't hurt. You can manage all of these arrangement creations, save over old ones, whatever you want to do. So now, as long as you're seeing the 10-2-22 arrangement here, now is where you start to get creative. So first thing that I would do is just go back to the song and kind of see, hey, is it verse, pre-chorus, chorus, and then maybe there's an instrumental before the second verse. If that's the case, you just drag from this up here, which is your master arrangement, telling you here's everything that you have, and then as needed you just drag and drop. Let's say there's 3 bridges and then another instrumental and a soft chorus at the end, and then we'll go to a blank slide to and then we'll go to a blank slide to finish it off. So this could be something that our song looks like. So as you're going through and clicking these slides, it's just populating the information that you put in. So you can build any arrangement you want really quickly once you have a master file arrangement completed. So that is how I recommend on the fly. If Caleb happens to say, or whatever the worship leader is that day says, hey, can we cut those 3 bridges to 2? You're not having to highlight and try to delete or copy and double click, or can we change the last words of the last thing? On the fly, you can just delete that bridge and say, let's double the chorus after the bridge. Let's drop that in. You're done. All you had to do was click on your arrangement, make sure it's on 10/22 for that Sunday, and change any of this content that you want. Now, let's just say if there was any words that need to change, where, hey, the bridge, the first time it says, I can't contain the feeling of joy being in your presence. I can't help but dance, can't help but sing, and I don't really care. Let's just say, for instance, that on the second pass of that bridge, the worship leader wanted to say, I can't contain the feeling of hope. And we wanted to change that. If we do that here, and you say, let me change joy to hope, you might have noticed as I was typing over here on the other slide that I'm not editing, the word hope is now there. And as I'm deleting, it's moving it. So because you're editing the arrangement while utilizing information from the master, if you change it here, it changes it on the master, but not in a good way. It'll change it everywhere. So how do we fix this? We go back to the master, and if we have differing words, we would just copy and paste this slide, and now we'll give it another grouping so it can have individual text editing capability. So now we have bridge and bridge 2, and on bridge 2 we can quickly edit and change that word from joy to hope. So now we've fixed our paint selection, if you will, and as we go back to our arrangement, we'll see, oh man, it says joy twice. That's just because it's utilizing the bridge 2 times. So we'll delete that, bring in our second bridge, and there's our word differentiation between joy and hope. So that's how you would get through the arrangements and the importing of songs, and be able to manage this a lot easier by utilizing that arrangement view. And another thing that you might want to consider doing, which I think we all know pretty well, if you hit Control V on the keyboard, it'll open your media bin. And under this tab here, motion backgrounds, you can throw in any of the various backgrounds that are in there. Just, maybe not Pastor Maury, that'd be weird. But once you have your arrangement built, just come out to the side and plop that motion background in there, and now we're really ready to go. So one thing that is new to ProPresenter as of the last probably year is something called macros. And without getting too far into the weeds about macros, I'll just show you what they can do and what we use them for, and how simple it is to utilize it. So over here on the audience screen, you'll see this is what the audience is seeing, and this is what the confidence monitor is seeing. The two TVs mounted on the front side of the stage so that the musicians and band can kind of see the lyrics a little differently. For the case of worship, we would come over to macros, and these macros trigger actions within ProPresenter to perform functions that we tell it to do. So for instance, there is a macro sitting right here. It's called pre-service and announcements, and what it does is when that macro is dropped, it's telling both of these screens we want to see the media that is behind the presenter on the confidence monitor TVs. That way they'll know if they make an announcement, they just got to look left or right and they can see what's showing on the screen behind them. They don't have to awkwardly turn around. Good for communication. So we place a macro there saying, hey, we want that to happen for all of these slides in this whole thing, in this whole item. So you just have to drop it on the first slide and you're good to go. And it will remain active until you give it a different macro function. So for instance, we're just working inside here, right? But then when we click the countdown video, we see that it's on the confidence monitor as well as the audience monitor. Reason for that is once this macro has been triggered, it will remain triggered until you either clear it or until you give it another assignment. So we'll let that run. There's a macro here for announcements and offerings, just to be thorough and make sure that we have that for this file in case you were jumping around from worship to here. Now this is where it changes, is in worship. In worship, it's different look on the confidence monitor, and for the sermon, it is a different look for the confidence monitor. So for worship, obviously, once we get all our songs in, on the first slide of everything, once it's finalized, just drag and drop the worship lyrics. And when you click this, if you watch the confidence monitor, ProPresenter automatically is told, change the confidence monitor to where the band and the singers can see the first couple words of the next slide. And as you click that slide, it'll populate a preview of the next slide while showing in white the current slide. So this is kind of how we get through our arrangements and help the band and whatnot. And this is kind of the reason why I don't do a whole bunch of slides or a whole bunch of lines. Can get jumbled up on the confidence monitor, but not a huge concern. So for worship, you just want to drag that worship lyrics macro on the first slide of every song, and you're good to go. Then for sermon notes, obviously we drag the sermon and we put it on the slide, not next to the slide. Drag it on the slide. Now when I click here, you'll see that our sermon slides will go to the audience. All our sermon points that are laid out over here will go to that. And our confidence monitor goes to the clock. This is so that whoever is presenting the word can be aware of what time it is and whether they've gone over or if they're short and there's for whatnot. So there you go for that. And then for pre-service and announcements, again on the dismissal slides, you'll want to drop one there so that at the end, the presenter, if it needs it, can see the mission statement. If they can't read it on the back wall, they're going to read it on this TV, but don't have to awkwardly, again, turn around and read it behind them. So that's kind of the power of macros and why we use them and how simple it is to just format the flow of a service with that. One quick note in regards to worship is sometimes we do run worship pads. So we usually trigger those from ProPresenter as well. So just depending on the week, you come to pads, and let's just say the first song was in the key of C. We want to drag that and drop it. You'll see this little music note. And when that slide is triggered, you'll see this audio starts to populate, and that synth pad will go to the soundboard for the sound man to bring that in as an aid to the worship environment. What's tricky about this is sometimes when you pull up a song you've done before, you'll go, oh, the macro's there, good. Oh, music note, awesome. But we don't know if that music note is correct to that specific week. So the only way to know is once you've clicked this slide and it starts playing your volume, come over to the music note and it'll tell you you're playing the audio file VibraPad in the key of C. So that's how you would know which one it is. And let's just say, for instance, hey, that needs to be the key of B. So what you would want to do is, I've actually never tried this. I think you can just throw it on like that. Yeah. So it'll only hold one music note at a time. So if you need it to be a different key, you just come over to your audio file, pads, and then just drag the key that you need. And if you don't need one, right click this slide and you can come down to remove actions, and it would allow you to remove the background video if you wanted to. You could remove the macro if you wanted to, but you can select remove the VibraPad, and that would be in the case of Caleb saying, hey, we're not going to do pads this morning. We'll just remove them off those slides when we're building the set. All right, lastly, probably one of the most beneficial things to a Sunday, because we all know how crazy Sundays can get. Sundays can be pretty hectic with any kind of pivoting moments or shifting moments where we got to do something instead of another thing. And it might get to be 10:57 before we realize, oh no, let's launch the countdown video. Been in many services where that's been an issue, but ProPresenter, once again, has our back. So how you can access, and I might have actually excluded this part of the window in my recording, but just above the mouse right here, there is a table called View. If you click View, it'll open up a lot of things that you can then click on to view. You can view a macro palette, you can view your timers and your stage displays and audio bins and time code, planning center link, and all that stuff. But to work specifically with the countdown video being on a timer to automatically launch, you can click calendar, and then you'll see all the things that we have working. We have a Wednesday night countdown, and then we have a Sunday morning 8 a.m., 9:30, and 11. So that's what we're going to work with first. We'll come to our Sunday morning 8 a.m. service. All you have to do is change the date to the date of the service, which, thank you Planning Center, is October 2nd, so we already know that. We know that this needs to start 5 minutes before the first service, which again is 8 a.m. So 7:55, and you would think that you would want this to be on a repeating cycle, but that is not a good idea for how we utilize Planning Center. So we don't ever repeat, ever. It'll cause a lot of issues. So just repeat these steps: coming to Sunday morning 8 a.m., changing the date, leaving the time alone. Then the action needs to be set for this calendar to trigger. So that's where it gets tricky. Come down to playlist and select the date of the service you want to schedule, and then select the item that you want it to trigger, and that's the countdown video. And if we hit test, we'll see that we're still highlighted under October 2nd and that countdown video played. Now, where I said it gets tricky is that, let's say we change the date to 10/2, but I forget to change this and just kind of go on to the next one and change the date and remember the step this time. Well, when I go back to 9:30 and I test this, you will see that the countdown video is playing, but the problem is you've managed to jump to the last time it was scheduled, whatever file or action was selected last, which for this one was actually, it's going to be somewhere way down here, under September 25th, under the countdown video. So it changed the songs. It changed everything. So we're running last week's service right now, and that is not a good thing. So always remember, when you are coming in to do this, you want to get the date correct and get the action set for the weekend that we are under. And if you ever want to test it, you just have to simply hit the test button. Now all of a sudden, we're back on October 2nd. We've got our correct slides. We've got everything working the way that it should. And so that's how the calendar and the countdown can be utilized. So that is your overview of Planning Center and how it works with ProPresenter and how we get ProPresenter services set up for the weekend. Hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.